Next tonight, we continue our ongoing conversations on Afghanistan. Tonight, it's with an official dissenter to U.S. policy. Judy Woodruff is in charge.
After 5 months serving with the State Department in Afghanistan, Matthew Hoh became the first U.S. official known to resign in protest against American policies there. In his September 10th letter of resignation, revealed this week in the Washington Post, the former Marine captain said, "I fail to see the value or worth in continued U.S. casualties or expenditure of resources in support of the Afghan government in what is truly a 35-year-old civil war." Ho's resignation was greeted more in sorrow than in anger by the State Department. Special Envoy Richard Holbrooke said, quote, "We took his letter very seriously because he was a good officer." Mr. Hoh joins us now. Thank you for being here. So is it your view that the U.S. should just get out?
Of course, it's impossible to wave a magic wand and be God from there. However, I do believe we are involved in a 35-year-old civil war. I believe we are not the lead character in that war, that it's an internal conflict. I believe that 60,000 troops in Afghanistan do not serve to defeat al-Qaeda and do not serve to stabilize the Pakistan government.
What is it that has given you the confidence to know this? What did you see in Afghanistan?
Sure. Well, before I went, I studied quite a bit about it, read a lot of its history, particularly the late 70s and in the Soviet-Afghan War. Additionally, I have many friends and colleagues who have served in Afghanistan. I went there with some ideas that just didn't sit well with me about what we were doing there, but I wanted to contribute. When I got there, however, serving in the East and in the South, the similarities were the same. What I found, we were fighting people who were fighting us only because we're occupying them, or because we are supporting a central government that they view as occupying them. Most importantly, I think I listened to as many Afghans as possible, because my role as a political advisor was to work with the Afghan government as well as work with as many local Afghans as I could.
You say, Matthew Hoh, that what you see is a civil war going on. The U.S. is a bystander. Mm-hmm. But what it looks like to many Americans as they look is that it's the Afghan government being attacked, the Afghan people being attacked by the Taliban, by elements of al-Qaeda. How can we be sure which is right?
Sure. First of all, al-Qaeda does not exist in Afghanistan. I think there's plenty of evidence to that fact. And the way the country works, it's so localized there. It's what I refer to and other people refer to as valleyism. They're concerned with their local...
Valleyism.
Valleyism, yes. So if you take the idea of nationalism, shrink it down to a much smaller level, these are folks who live within communities of 100 to 500 people, and that's, I don't want to say where their world ends, but that's what they're concerned with. And they've never had a central government there that has done any good, that has delivered services to them. They've never had a central government that hasn't brought them anything, it's only taking. And so to them, whether it was the Najibullah, the Rabbani, the Taliban, or the Karzai government, they're all one and the same. And particularly in the East, where they're fighting us, and in the South, where they're fighting us, those folks there don't make up the people who are the central government.
So the argument, though, by as you know, by General Stanley McChrystal, who's in charge over there for the military, by John McCain, who's very much in favor of the U.S. staying, is that if the U.S. leaves, Taliban takes over and al-Qaeda is going to come back.
I don't believe al-Qaeda will come back. I believe that since 2001, al-Qaeda has evolved. They have turned into, as I like to say, an ideological cloud that exists on the internet and recruits worldwide. If you look at the attacks al-Qaeda has been successful with over the last 7-8 years, including our attacks on 9/11, they weren't conducted by Afghans or Pakistanis. And a lot of the preparation and training took place in Western Europe or even here in the United States. So I don't think al-Qaeda has any interest in ever tying itself again to a geographical or political boundary. I think they're content to exist as they have evolved, and they are a threat, and they should be our priority. We need to defeat them, But again, 60,000 troops in Afghanistan does not defeat al-Qaeda.
What about the Taliban?
The Taliban, we chased them out of power in 2001 like we rightfully should have. However, what you have in Quetta now, I believe, is just the remnants of that. And while the Quetta Shura Taliban, as we refer to them, is a threat, and is a threat to the Karzai government, I don't believe they are a threat to the United States. And furthermore, I don't believe that they would be able to retake Kabul, particularly if we ensured that there was no Pakistani support for them if we left Afghanistan.
What do you think would happen, though, if President Obama did give General McChrystal the troops he wants, or a significant increase in the number of troops?
I believe it's only going to fuel the insurgency. It's only going to reinforce claims by our enemies that we are an occupying power, because we are an occupying power, and that will only fuel insurgency, and that will only cause more people to fight us, or those fighting us already to continue to fight us.
You don't think there's any argument the U.S. can make to the Afghan people that we're there to, as we have been, to promote democracy, that could change their view of
Sure.
what you say is that we're an occupying force?
I was up in east of the country, up in Kunar and up in the Nuristan areas, just where we lost 8 soldiers a couple weeks ago. The brigade combat team that was there for a year, in 1 year's time, they dropped about 500,000 pounds of ordnance off of aircraft, and they shot about 50,000 rounds of indirect fire and artillery. And on the other hand, they will have spent probably about $160 to $180 million in development money over the course of a year. This is an area of 4.5 million people. If after 8 years of war, you've done these kinds of things, and people aren't coming around, I don't think they're ever going to come around. I think we have to realize that sometimes people don't like us and don't want to be like us. And we have to accept that. And then we have to engage them politically and work with them that way.
One of the other points you make, Matthew Hoh, is about corruption in the Karzai government. Mm-hmm. You were very blunt in writing that Karzai is advised by drug lords, and you went into some detail about that. The other argument, though, on that is that, well, that's just endemic in that culture, that the U.S. has to be prepared to accept a certain amount of corruption when you're dealing with these people.
I think that would be true if we weren't sacrificing our young men and women in support of that regime. The idea that we're losing somebody's son or somebody's husband is dying to support a regime that's profiting off of our aid money is criminal. It's wrong. And furthermore, I know a lot of people speak about the Taliban receiving financing through opium and everything. There are a lot of us who believe that they receive just as much money through our own development money we're spending there.
Last thing I want to ask you is, some people have said it all sounds very good, but you were only there in Afghanistan for 5 months. You're relatively young, what, 37?
36.
36 years old. Who are you to say what the United States should be doing? When there are others who've been there longer, studied it for years and so forth.
Sure. I wish people would refute what I'm saying. I've seen that criticism. But I have not seen anyone tell me why it's not a civil war. I've not seen anyone tell me how stabilizing the Afghan government will defeat al-Qaeda. I've not heard anyone tell me how keeping 60,000 troops or 80,000 or 100,000 troops in Afghanistan will stabilize Pakistan. So I haven't heard the answers to those questions. As for the criticisms about my age or if I was there for 5 months, I was there for 5 months. I was in 2 parts of the country. I worked with as many local people as I could, and I listened as much as possible. At that point, what I wrote, first off, what I wrote in my resignation letter, there's not a novel or unique thought in that. Those are thoughts shared by military officers and State Department officers as well. My concern is not how are we fighting this war, but why are we fighting this war?
Matthew Hoh, thank you very much for coming in to talk with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Judy.
There's more on Afghanistan on our website, newshour.pbs.org. We have a survey of Afghans. It shows they feel more secure than they did a year ago. And you can watch a web-only video following a U.S. Army lieutenant in the mountainous border area near Pakistan.